Welcome back to another episode of the Meat Mafia podcast. If this is your first time joining us, we have one goal and one goal only, and that is that you, yes you, listen to this podcast and get at least one valuable piece of information that inspires you to go radically change your health today. If this is your second, third, fourth, or 100th time listening to the Meat Mafia podcast, we are so grateful to have you, and we are so thankful for your continued support. Before we get going, if you would not mind going and following us on all of our platforms, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and of course, Twitter, we would greatly appreciate it. This just allows us to expand our reach, and your reviews, comments, and feedback give us more and more things to think about and improve the show with. Lastly, this is a user-supported podcast and newsletter, and we would not be able to do what we love doing without your generous support and the support from our sponsors. We take great pride in the relationships that we've built with our sponsors and truly believe that they are the best resources out there for better health. Your support and their support, and you supporting them, means the world to us. If you are enjoying the podcast and getting value out of it, please check us out on the Fountain app below, where you can support us by streaming us sats or sending us support via our Fountain Bitcoin wallet. Without further ado, here is a word from our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Carnivore Bar. The Carnivore Bar is a veteran-owned, animal-based company focused on bringing you the highest quality pemmican product on the market. Pemmican is an ancient tradition practiced by American indigenous cultures, and it's focused on simple ingredients: beef, tallow, and salt. It's built for grab-and-go snacking, and it's a great sort of travel, hiking, or school lunch snack. And it's really built for those long-lasting days where you can just run on basically no fuel other than just simple fats. It's rich in saturated fats and provides everything you need to sustain long-lasting energy throughout the busy day. In my opinion, this is a product that is an absolute must, so go check it out in the link below. Also, check out our podcast with the founder, Philip Meese. He does an incredible job breaking down the mission and the passion behind the company. And I think if you're interested in animal-based nutrition, Philip will inspire you with his product. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you by Holy Cow Beef. Holy Cow Beef is regeneratively raised, grass-fed, grass-finished beef raised right here in Lubbock, Texas. Regeneratively raised, grass-fed, grass-finished beef is the gold standard of beef, and Ann and Weldon Warren have made it their lives' mission to provide incredibly high-quality beef to their local community and beyond. They have been raising their animals this way for decades. In fact, they were some of the most influential voices for getting grass-fed and grass-finished beef in Whole Foods back when Whole Foods was a startup grocery store. They were influential in setting the AGA standards, which is the American Grass-Fed Association, so you know they are doing things the right way, and on top of all of that, their beef tastes like butter. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef provides a superior omega-3 to omega-6 ratio than your typical beef, or in other words, it causes less inflammation in your body. So you are promoting a high-protein, high-fat diet with this amazingly high-quality beef, and saturated fats are playing their critical role in benefiting your body through supporting hormonal functions and cellular functions. And if you're looking for the highest quality beef, look no further than Holy Cow Beef. Leave your butcher box, that Australian and New Zealand raised meat, in the cart and order from your friends Ann and Weldon Warren over at Holy Cow Beef. I almost forgot the most important part there. Ann and Weldon Warren also accept Bitcoin as payment, so go check them out at their website in the link below, and you can pay in Bitcoin or in cash if you're looking to save your Bitcoin. I don't know about you all, but I am all about rewriting the incentives when it comes to healthcare, and CrowdHealth is doing just that. CrowdHealth is essentially crowdfunding for healthcare with a small HSA component mixed in. Paying through the nose for health insurance you may never use, only to be turned away when you actually need it, is incredibly frustrating. Also, the exorbitant costs of health insurance has so many baked in premiums that when you compare settling your doctor's bills by paying in cash versus using insurance, the cost is astronomical. So crowdfunding allows you to settle your medical bills in cash and then get the funding you need from your group through CrowdHealth. This is a great alternative to health insurance for people who are low risk, healthy people who just want peace of mind knowing that if anything actually did happen, they do have a pool of funds to pull from to cover their medical costs. The best part? My group is saving a portion of the monthly opt-in in Bitcoin, and the rest is in cash. So those savings are going towards actually preserving long-term value for my group through a vehicle like Bitcoin. We are really excited about this concept, and since the business model is predicated on an incentive-based healthcare, it is a great concept. For people with low risk, minimal healthcare costs, it is a no-brainer. Go check them out in the link below and use our promo code MAFIA for a discount on your first 6 months with Crowd Health. Officially start the podcast here.
There we go.
Justin, what's going on, man?
What's up, my brother? Thanks for having me.
Dude, stoked to have you on.
Thank you so much.
I think this is going to be a great rip. We've already kind of gotten a lot of the conversation out of the way.
I feel like we've been ripping for 2 hours.
We've had 2 pre-podcasts. We could have recorded it. They both would have been gems, but we've still got so much good stuff to talk about.
Let's go. Let's do it.
We were saying outside in the comments, Harry and I were talking about themes and just things we wanted to discuss with you. And you were saying, hey, what do you guys want to talk about? We were thinking Bitcoin, your entrepreneurial path, your daily routine. Like there's a lot of ways that we were thinking about the conversation. And then just naturally talking to you, we found out that we have a mutual connection where how the Meat Mafia podcast was born was that we were supposed to sign up for Ironman Mont-Tremblant. That race got canceled. We pivoted to Ironman Waco. And then through that experience, we started the Meat Mafia brand. And Mont-Tremblant is actually the first full distance Ironman that you did. So
that is
really
correct.
Cool.
Great race. Amazing race. 2019.
Yeah.
Great race.
And that was a big part of your life.
Huge part of my life. I mean, for two years preparing for that was quite an emotional journey. And it's not the race, right? The race is not the training. The training is the summer 3,000 miles biking down the PCH, running, 1,200 miles and training for over a year. It's the swimming of thousands of yards a week. Like that's the Ironman, right? And then the 3 halves I did before that season. So that season was a 3 half, 5 Olympic distances, 2 sprints, 4 half Ironmans, 1 full Ironman was that season, 2019 season, strong season.
Wow.
And I ended at Malibu.
Do most people realize that was a big part of your life? I mean, most people know you as the founder of Zion, but do most people actually appreciate the fact that you are a legitimate triathlete at one point?
I don't think anyone actually knows that about me. I think that my friends knew, right? I was this guy that on Instagram, I was always posting my workouts. So I was like, all right, time to go to the pool. All right, time to run 12 miles. All right, time to do this, time to do that. People are like, dude, this guy just works out all the time. They just knew me as the guy that worked out all the time. But they didn't know. And I think like now that I guess whatever my internet persona or the person I am on the internet has grown a little bit, I don't think they have any idea about that part of my life. And it was huge because it actually taught me a lot about myself. There's something about a friend of mine, Colin O'Brady, recommends everyone should take 12 hours and go walk and be by themselves for a bit. And I did that in the Ironman because there's no headphones, there's no music. It's you, your breath, your bike, you're swimming and you're running. That's it for 12 hours by yourself. And I think...
No, sorry, go ahead.
And so that's what it was for me.
Do you feel like one particular discipline spoke to you more than the other 3?
Swimming for sure. I mean, I'm a swimmer. My full distance race time for the full distance Ironman is 59 minutes to do the swim.
Wow.
Yeah. So pretty strong. It was like top 20 out of the water, which was pretty fast swim for me.
And it's interesting too with the training because I feel like you want to gravitate towards your strengths and kind of ignore your weaknesses, or at least I did. So I'm the complete opposite to you where I suck at swimming. I think I got out of the pool a full hour after you did. But I was noticing during my workouts, it's like the thing that I needed to do the most was swim. I was putting it off. I would want to bike. I would want to run. You want to focus on your strengths. Did you feel like a similar thing when you were training, or were you just like, I just want to bang all 3 disciplines and give it my best shot?
I think what's important for people to understand is that before I did the Ironman, I was 240 pounds. So I lost 70 pounds in 500 days to do the Ironman. So I couldn't run a mile when I decided to do this thing. Like it was an unbelievable thing to do. And I was like, you know what? I got to go figure out how to lose. First of all, how do I lose a ton of weight? And then I'm going to go find the hardest kind of foot race that you can do, I guess, that's not going to kill you. Like ultras are pretty bad on your body.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to do an Ironman. Perfect. 3 sports. We'll mix it up. It's going to be awesome. So
talk to us about Justin Rezvani at 240 pounds. What was your life like back then versus after the Ironman when you'd done this huge feat and really built some momentum for yourself physically?
So it's 2016. I had just sold my first company, The Amplify. I was the guy that woke up, ate breakfast, had 2 massive sandwiches for lunch, had a snack at 4 p.m., and then had a massive dinner of pasta, whatever, twice for dinner, and did it all over again, and did it all over again, and did it all like every day, working 7 days a week, barely got any sleep. That was me. And I was just very unhealthy. There's photos on Instagram. I was a big dude. I was a big dude. And I just didn't take care of myself. And I'm looking at myself. I'm like 28 years old. Like, what am I going to die at 35? I was drinking. I was doing series of drugs here and there. I just was not taking care of my body. So I was like, what am I going to do here? And I had to figure out something. And triathlon felt like it was the right move for me for some reason. Because I was like, look, I was a swimmer growing up. I really like riding my bike, but I don't know how to run. Like running was the last thing that I wanted to do. So let me figure out, like, I could do this. I could do a great job doing this. And that's what inspired triathlon. I actually, the Ironman thing was on a list I wrote when I was 19. It was like 30 things to do before I turned 30. Ironman was one of them. And I didn't get a chance to do a full distance before I turned 30, but I did the half 2 days before I turned 30 in Hawaii. I did the 70.3 Honu race. So I did an Ironman, just not a full distance one. And that was like the last thing I needed to do, but I didn't have that much time to prepare for it.
It's so interesting. The Ironman is so interesting because of the people that do it, because it's all different shapes and sizes, and then also just different motivations. Harry and I were talking about this. It's like you meet people that do an Ironman and they've done marathons and they've done 70.3s and triathlons, and they're like, all right, I'm going to test myself and step up to the big distance. And then there's people like you that are literally going off the couch. They sign their name on the dotted line to do this race. And they're like, I'm just going to figure out a way to get it done. I want to lose a bunch of weight. I want to have this like transcendent experience. So that sounds like very similar to what your motivation was. You were kind of just looking to shake it up after selling this company, right?
Yeah. And I needed to master my health. That was the thing, is like, I thought that I was doing decently well in business and relationships and wealth and money, but my health was the only thing that was like really lacking. I had no understanding of nutrition. I had no understanding of what is like fitness. I had no concept of macronutrients, calories, what is a calorie, what is not a calorie, what to eat, when. I had no concept of it. So I also decided to really study. I'm generally an obsessive person. Like whatever I do, I obsess over. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to figure out my health. And that was the path that I went down. And it was quite successful because I learned a lot about myself, as we were discussing outside. I went keto for 2 years. I understand my glucose very well. Like I know my glucose so well. This is kind of strange. Is I'll go to the doctor. I did this in the hospital. I just did it a year ago. And I'll walk into the hospital and she's about to do like a glucose reader just on my finger. And I'm like 98 milligrams per deciliter. She's like, what'd you just say? I was like, that's going to be my blood glucose when you check it. She's like, how do you know that? I was like, because I know how my body feels and I know what certain glucose levels feel like.
Yeah.
I know like if I'm in the 70s, I feel really high because there's a lot of ketones running in my body. I know my body really well. And I was like, 90 is like 95, 98 is my baseline. So it's very likely that's a 98 and it's right.
Equip's unflavored Prime has one single ingredient derived directly from grass-fed beef protein. For purists like ourselves who try to only consume balanced, real sources of nutrition, this protein powder checks all the boxes. Go check them out in the link below and use our promo code in the description to get a discount. Where are you at today with your health stuff? Like, do you still obsess over it, or do you feel like too much of that?
Not as much. I'm a little bit lax than I used to. I used to be very obsessed with it, but there's a story to it because so I lose 70 pounds. I do the Ironman in August of 2019. Then I do the Malibu Triathlon a month later. I place 4th overall in my age group. I did an Olympic distance in 2 hours and 20 minutes. So pretty fast Olympic distance. And then 2 months later, I'm climbing Haleakala. I have fastest road to 10,000 feet on Maui. I get back and the next morning I have a seizure. And I was sitting in a dentist chair. I had a seizure. I go to the hospital and they found a benign tumor in my brain. It was called a cavernoma. So that day, everything changed. It was November 20th, 2019. This is all within a 3-month period. And I had to like completely stop training because the doctor was like, look, if you have a seizure in the water, can't really swim. If you have it while you're running, you could fall and hit your head. You definitely can't ride a bike. And we got to take this out of your brain. So January 2020, I had brain surgery to remove a piece, this cavernoma in my brain. And everything changed after that. Like my life of training, I did one more race a year later here in Austin. I did like the Pflugerville Triathlon, but it's not the same. It never was the same. I don't think I could go back to competitive racing for a while. And then 6 months after the surgery, I started Zion. So life has completely changed. Like my focus is no longer that. I've kind of expanded that, but my non-negotiable is to lift heavy weights every day. There's no question, like at all, unequivocally, every day I have to lift a heavy weight no matter what. So
Sorry, go ahead.
What?
You know what I was going to say.
What?
I was going to say the tweet that you had, the Rezvani daily Rezvani.
Yeah.
And you have some really good items on there. Can you run through what are the non-negotiables of that day look like, the perfect day?
Lift heavy weights, drink a lot of water, sleep, wake up when I wake up. I don't know what the list
It's
was.
like high ROI or like asymmetric something?
Yeah,
bets?
make asymmetric bets every day. Say no a lot. I say no to a ton of things. Like now it's kind of weird that Zion's getting a little bit bigger because people are like asking me for stuff and I say no a lot. Like really like the attention of my time is very important. I can go through the list. I don't know what, off the top of my head. I wrote that tweet like a couple weeks ago and it just went out. So but those are, I think we should like pop it up on something.
Absolutely.
That'd be awesome.
Just to show.
Well, it's awesome to just simplify things like that. Like I think most people think there's always this complicated formula behind a successful person, but usually it's just mastering the simplicity of being great. Like
totally.
What are the basic 4 or 5 things that you need to do every day to get yourself in that zone to crush the day?
Absolutely. And no is a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence.
No is a complete sentence.
Interesting.
No, period.
What sort of things do you like saying no to?
I think anytime someone asks for my time without a really clear understanding, it's like a very clear no. I'm very supportive as a friend. I usually say yes to things to support my friends, but I'm learning to say, what I'm noticing a lot more, there's people that want to spend time that I don't really have like tremendous relationships with, and I just don't answer anymore. And just because I don't have the capacity, and I'm also growing as an individual, and I want to make sure that like my needs are felt.
Yeah.
And so it's like even no to just seeing people. Like no, I'm okay, thanks.
Yeah. Do you think you almost have to earn that ability to say no? And what I mean by that is like when you were in your early to mid 20s building out your first company prior to selling, do you think that it was very important for you to say yes and not no to more things?
Of course.
Okay.
But I would define success as the ability not to work with assholes. So success can be defined with the ability to say no. You can actually decide everyone that you speak with, everyone that you work with. To me, that's defined success. Because some people are just forced to, like, oh, I got to do this. And I remember those days. I was nice, like I would do things that I was like, it's not fully me. But I'm doing that for to achieve this certain thing, and I ended up doing it and getting where I am. But that's what I define success as.
How has your health journey with that one event, having a seizure, sort of like giving you a little bit more groundedness or perspective? I imagine that's an eye-opening experience, life-changing experience in a lot of ways. But how have you recentered yourself and started to build off of that event into a better person?
I think that my thought that I had a lot of time completely changed, right? I think that we have this perception that life is long, but nothing really jolts you. That life, it can be very short when you're sitting in an ICU and the doctor comes up to you when you're 31 years old and 10% body fat and says, your brain is bleeding and we don't know what to do. There's just something about how the world changes, because it's not your leg, it's not your arm, it's not like, it's your brain. It's not something like, there's nothing you can do. There's no pill you can take. Your brain is bleeding.
Yeah.
It's not something easy that can just like get in there, stick it, repair it. Like it's not that.
Yeah.
And the psychological impact of that is that, there was nothing that I did that caused it. It was something I was born with. And a lot of people are born with these things and they just don't know because they don't ever bleed.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of unpacking there. And part of my journey was, when this happened on November 20th, I got at the ICU 3 days later and we scheduled the brain surgery for November 9th, which was 6 weeks later. I kind of went through this experience like learning how to die for 6 weeks. So I said, okay, if this surgery goes bad, which there wasn't a likelihood that it would have gone bad, but you don't know. Like they cut the skull open, they rip it off. It was 2 inches behind my right eye, so they had to cut the brain open to get in there. Like, you don't know. So it could go bad. And so the question is, if this is the last 6 weeks I'm here, like, how am I going to live my life?
Yeah.
Truly, if I don't wake up from this. And so I spent 6 weeks learning how to die. It was a lot of Ram Dass, a lot of meditation, a lot of just chillness. I also knew that I really had to go into the surgery with a calm state, because a lot of people go in there really nervous and they have adrenaline running and all these other things in their body. And I was like in there, as soon as they put me back and they put the mask on that they're about to put you out, and I started oming, and they're like, you're the most relaxed guy that goes through brain surgery.
Wow.
And I woke up and I was like, fucking feeling like, holy shit. I 7 hours later, but I got out of the hospital in like 48 hours, which is rare for a craniotomy. Like, most people don't walk for a week.
Yeah.
And I was fucking walking. I was like, I want to fucking go home. I'm out of here. Like, let's go. I want to run a mile as soon as I can. I couldn't run the next week. I wanted to physically, but it would hurt because everything was moving and the titanium plate wasn't like settled yet.
Yeah. It's so interesting to just to think about what you were probably going through, especially someone that was very successful at a young age, probably like push, kind of create what I want in the universe, to have to be like, look, there's a lot of shit that I just don't have control over in this situation.
Yeah. And what it also sparked when I woke up was that I can't end it here. Like, this can't be the end of the story. So now I have to try something very difficult. And what I'm doing professionally is very fucking hard. Like, it's very hard to go build a new way of communicating on the web with payments and all this. Like, it's a very hard thing to do. And so I also want to like really go for something really big.
Totally.
So that also gave me that spark, because like, what's the worst that's going to happen here? Right? Like, I'm a very honest person. I'm very open. I'm not like, I do things out of integrity. So the worst thing that happens is Zion doesn't work out. But the best thing that happens is it does work out, or even better, it's sparking someone to say, man, I think there should be a social network with native payments that uses DIDs as the identifier, and then has a decentralized web node as this data storage, and allows peer-to-peer payments to move between people and peer-to-peer messages to move through people. And maybe that inspires someone to go create that company. And it was because they saw this podcast, or they listened to, or they read my book.
Yeah.
Whatever. Like, maybe that's a success. Maybe that's the point of what's supposed to happen. Yeah. So I can't lose. Like, anything that happens, there's no losing in this game for me at this point. I'm like, and I feel really good about that. There's days though, it's hard. There's days I'm like, fuck, why am I doing this? Why I can just stop, I can chill, because I don't have to work. That's the thing. Like, the parameters got to a point where when you make enough money, it gets to a point where like, it doesn't matter anymore. And I'm there. It doesn't matter for me the next whatever.
Yeah.
Like, this game doesn't, for me, it's just like, okay, I have a bigger airplane, or fly private in this way, like, or a bigger house, or a bigger this, like, the game doesn't change after a certain point.
Totally. Right.
So now it's about like values and the thing that you want to create in the world. At least that's my prerogative.
What strikes me as interesting about this conversation, that you're saying your perception of time changed after this health event, is you're the type of person who put a 30, before I'm 30, I want to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So you already had a very, finite view of what your time looked like. And then you're saying now it's shifted. And I think it's only appropriate that you're working on Bitcoin, which is this massive project in terms of integrating it into the real world and seeing how we can actually use this asset, this technology that's been made. And, everyone says, low time preference, high time preference thinking. Has Bitcoin, or was Bitcoin something that came into your life around this time that started changing your thinking around time?
Yeah. So I think that it naturally happened afterwards. And, about 6 months after I have brain surgery and I get out, and I had owned Bitcoin for some time, but I didn't understand. I had Bitcoin, the asset, but I didn't understand Bitcoin, the network. I look at those two things as different. I read the Lightning white paper. It was sent by a good friend and now investor in the company. Said, read this. I was reading it on a plane to Istanbul for like 10 hours. And I kept reading, and I had the paper version. I kept reading and I kept reading and I kept reading. I was like, holy shit. Like, if this thing is what I think it is, this is exactly the thing I've been thinking about for 10 years. This is the solution I needed for my first company. Because I've had this platform thesis for the past 10 years that I didn't really vocalize, but I kind of knew within myself. I would write this down, like, platforms evolve over time, and the next series of platforms will be creators. And I have always had this, and I can unpack that a little bit more in detail, but I've always had this thesis. But the key I could never figure out is how could peer-to-peer money transfer work? Like that's the stuff I couldn't figure out. And then I see Bitcoin. I was like, damn, but Bitcoin's slow at the base layer. This won't work. And then I see Lightning. I'm like, holy shit, this thing is going to do it. That's the last piece of what I needed for my plan. And that's when I started Zion. I was like, cool, this is awesome. Like, and I think the sovereignty of Bitcoin, the freedom of Bitcoin, it's like no nonsense money. And that's what I love about it. I've been using this word no nonsense.
No nonsense.
Like I was at the Bitcoin conference like a couple weeks ago in LA. And I think all this crypto stuff is just nonsense. Like I listened to these people talk. I was like, it's nonsense. What you're saying is nonsense. Come on. Like it doesn't make sense. So this is no nonsense money.
Well, it's just more of the same. It's more of the same nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Prior to reading that white paper, were you interested in potentially getting back in the game and starting another company, or where was your mindset at that point?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. I moved to Austin in September of 2020 to just chill, like still chill. But I knew there was this like inclination of something I needed to do. And then when I moved here, I was with Kyle Kingsbury, which he's got a podcast as well.
Yeah.
First podcast I was ever on, actually.
Nice.
And Kyle introduced me to some guy that had his he had his documentary banned off the internet. And so I was like, man, how do you like release something on the internet that can never be turned off? Right. And the thing that they'll always get you, it's not just the servers and the DNS and all that stuff, is the money. Right. The money is the first thing to go censored. Because if you can't stop the money, then you can't stop the system. So how do you do something that's able to like not stop the money? And it seemed like Bitcoin was like, if you look at the end of the day, Bitcoin's really the only one. It's the only one that you can't stop the money. So that's what started this journey of thinking about, okay, what could you do with Lightning? Then can you build a social network? And then how do you support creators? And everything just kind of evolved. And the wheels have just been turning for 2 years. And now we see what, this thing is. And it's evolved to a massive thing. It's become a lot bigger than me, I think, in a lot of ways.
Well, it's getting a ton of publicity too. Like, I mean, people like Jack Dorsey are retweeting, things that you're putting out there in terms of creating the digital identities on Zion. And I think like there's this dream that one day the internet will be for everyone and not just beholden to the big tech companies who really do gatekeep a lot of the access to the internet. And I think Elon Musk was talking about this the other day. Like the App Store is basically controlled by Apple and Google. It's like, if something were to happen where they wanted Twitter off the app stores, what happens?
Yeah. And I think this is like, this comes to my like platform thesis, right? So if you look at the early 2000s, the only platforms were Google and Apple. Mm-hmm. And what they were able to create is the next evolution, the next generation of platforms, which were Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So the first base layer creates the second base layer. And then Facebook and Twitter and Instagram created what we see now as platforms, which are the people, the Joe Rogans of the world, the Aubrey Marcuses, the Paul Saladinos. So the question becomes now, if you look at this trend, what's happening, now is the time to build the technical solutions to allow the final platforms, the final people, to be able to have sovereignty and then bifurcate the other two things at front of the train.
Yeah.
That's been my thesis for 10 years. And that's why like my first business was, I'm going to go support content creators to make money on Instagram. Because if I can build a relationship and build a tool that makes it more efficient to them make money in their audiences and they become the biggest, because what their incentive is, you have to remember in 2012, there weren't a lot of incentives to be a creator. Yeah, YouTube was just starting to do ads. Instagram had just been bought by Facebook for $1 billion. So I said to myself, if I can create incentive models, which is built on advertising and they have money, they'll spend more time building content and they'll become the biggest thing on these platforms. And then in 10 years, I'll figure out how to do something with them. And that's kind of been it's evolved over time, but that's what we're at now. That's where we're at today, is like Zion is just an evolution of an idea from 2012.
That's so interesting.
So interesting. It's weird.
Because Zion is 2 years old, but you've had a decade into thinking about this and iterating. That's led to the point where you're at now.
Yeah, because we built one of the first apps on Instagram using Instagram's API and data from Instagram to do not only analytics, but share stuff happening on the platform. So I got to learn a lot about social early. I learned how it worked and learned how Twitter worked and how the Twitter I had full access to the Twitter fire hose at one point, and which was a lot of data. And I was like, well, what if this was open source? What if you can open source the social graph, but not just make it open source, but make it open state? Like, what does that do for a creator? And you notice what's interesting is, I've said this a lot, like creators have built mansions in other people's backyards with no rental agreement, right? And now you're seeing like this platform thesis I just talked to you about, you're seeing it play out in real time.
Yes.
You saw Twitter censoring individuals, and now the platform before them is now censoring them. So the question is, if you want to build something to bifurcate the entire system, how do you build a new type of internet?
Interesting.
How do you see it playing out? Is
Definitely.
that I censored you, you censor me, and now you have to build something from scratch. This is the mind meld that people have to start thinking about. And that's why Jack talks about like a mobile OS, right? A native browser OS. What's the possibility there? And I think there's just a very exciting time to be building in this category, because I think these are the building blocks that will build to the next social revolution on the web.
These themes of censorship that we've been seeing the last few years, if someone was to like almost give you a crystal ball 10 years ago, do you think that you would have predicted censorship? Like, were you kind of you were aware of it
100%.
back then? Yeah.
100%. This book is like a history of the last 200 years of censorship, because it didn't start now. It started with the 3-letter agencies. It started at the governmental level. Like, you have to understand how these bodies are regulated, is that censorship began in the year of decentralization, when information started becoming decentralized, when there aren't 2 news networks or 1 radio station or 2 newspapers. Like, that began the era. The moment the transistor was invented began the era of decentralization. So it's natural that censorship which will occur because centralized bodies want control.
One of the things that we spend a lot of time talking about on our show is centralization and decentralization as it relates to food. But there's all these stories around people like running into the USDA and the USDA strong arming them out of their business. And then that's a very, a real world example of someone's full livelihood. It's an analog example. There's no digital component to it at all, which I think is actually really hard to fathom in today's world, because everything is so digital. So like looking into the future with Zion, it feels like not enough people are really thinking about the idea of keeping centralization out of the web and really like trying to decentralize again. It's like not as important as an issue for a lot of people. How do we start to like raise some awareness around this topic?
I mean, it's trying to bring this to the bleeding edge of culture. I think that's my job. I think part of it is I go on stuff like this and really have an in-depth conversation, right? Like, I know that I'm one of the first through the door, and I'm the bloodiest through the door, and I got a ton of arrows on my back, but I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to sacrifice myself to like figure this thing out. Like, let's talk about what's going on in the world. So a lot of it, I think, is an awareness piece. Like, people to be aware, like, yeah, that Instagram thing, like, I don't own anything on that Instagram. Like, I like them. I'm happy for what they do for me, but we like gotta build something new. Like, we should probably figure out something on this. And so in the shadows, it's building a new technical solution that allows ownership. And I think that's why like the way we built Zion is really important. It's like not just the energy behind it, not the fact that we're open source, but the way it technically works is really important, because that DNA is built into the company. And it's something I talk about every single day, and I keep repeating it. So part of it is, I think, repetition, but it's also support from individuals like yourselves, like creators listening to this potential new way of doing something and saying, yeah, I think that's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's completely the thing that's going to win, but I think it begins the conversation at least. So I think that's the first way to do it.
Interesting. What is the user experience like of Zion versus like an Instagram or Twitter or Facebook? Or
not as good yet. That's
the key word.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to the thing we have to remember is these apps are 10 years old. They have literally hundreds of millions of man and woman hours working towards making this thing as addictive and perfect as possible. And Zion is 2 years old with a couple engineers trying to figure it out, right? So there's that element of this like dedication to building the perfect user experience, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible. And I think what we're launching in the next, and I'll show you guys after the pod, like the V2 is very slick, it's very fast. And the whole idea is that can you make the technology invisible? Like one of the big things is that in the app, anyone can pay anyone for anything inside the app. And what I mean by that is that any piece of content is an active opportunity for a Lightning payment. And that unpacks something really interesting. Imagine all your Instagram comments are boostable. Imagine like you can make a comment on a social network and someone around the world random can pay you for that comment. It's very weird.
Some of your memes.
Yeah, like the memes are awesome.
I'd be loaded.
Memes are so funny. Like we have a chat room inside of communities that get released in February. And imagine someone posts a meme and you have 100 people like just boosting 10 sats, which is half a penny for that meme. It's fucking interesting. It's like very interesting. Like,
Can you talk about the psychological shift that needs to happen? Because boosting is just like, I think it's lost on a lot of people, this idea of like actually transmitting value, monetary value to somebody for like a like, just because we've been taught social media through all these different channels.
Yeah,
right?
likes are free, right?
Yeah.
They're just like this free thing we're throwing around, likes. I think it's a new paradigm. That's why like we don't have likes in Zion. We have emojis and we have boosts. That's it. You like something, give the creator a couple sats. Like that's what you should do. Or give the person, the creator, the author of that post something. So it's a completely new paradigm. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know, right? This is something we're testing. Why I think it's going to work is in the first 5 months that we launched the first version, because we launched Zion V1 in August of 2021. We did 120,000 Lightning transactions in 5 months between creators and fans. So there's some proxy that says these people are like, and these aren't big transactions, right? The average transaction size was 50 sats, not a lot.
Yeah.
But the point was, it's like, oh, maybe they're kind of into this. Maybe this is something, and that's only with 3,000 people. It's like a small test case.
Yes.
The question is, what does that potentially look like? And like, could that be a big thing? Can you do that at scale? What does that look like? So I think it's just really an exciting opportunity to try something new.
It's so exciting. How has the adoption been with non-Bitcoiners onto the platform?
Not that right now we closed the app after March and we're kind of, waitlist is at almost 60,000 people trying to get into the app. So we haven't opened it up. So everyone's really anticipating this V2 because we ran into some just scaling hurdles because the first version everyone had a node, everyone needed a channel, really complicated Lightning stuff that just, it was a good assumption early on, but after we gathered enough data, this was not a way to scale.
Do you think of yourself more as a voice for creators or?
100%.
Okay.
Or?
I was going to say, or, because I'm curious where your technical background comes from, because you clearly understand Lightning. You read the white paper, but like there's clearly a deeper understanding of how important this technology is in terms of decentralization, ownership in a digital age. So like you kind of pair perfectly for this role at Zion, right? Like this technical understanding, but also being able to represent the creators in a way that's actually giving them a voice, actually letting them own and not rent the mansion on somebody else's land.
Yeah. So I have a Rezvani design language that I've written for myself. And the first thing that I've done my entire career is I want to speak to the hackers and the painters simultaneously. That's something that I've always wanted to do. It's just something that fits really well for me. Because in my heart, I'm a product designer. I design things. Like I was the one that said, okay, you can take these 3 things. I'm not the engineer, right? I'm not the one actually coding it all. I'm the product designer. I say, hey, you can take these 3 things, put them together, make the app look like this, do this. And then that would be something to build a social network on, right? Like it's just, because to me, it makes sense for a creator to have that. And it also makes like, if I'm a hacker, I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It's a cool technical way of doing something, right? It's a cool technical pattern of trying something new.
Definitely. I mean, with us being creators, it's just a very refreshing perspective because like, Twitter is the platform that we've been able to grow on just because we've gotten good at writing threads. So we can get those things go viral. We gain followers from it. Awesome. Instagram, it seems like it's very much pay to play. Where it's like, if we don't boost our post on Instagram, and I could be wrong, but just from our experience, it's like, if we're not boosting it, we're not gaining followers. And then every time we boost a post and just give our money directly to Instagram, that's how we're growing. So to be able to be in like a pure system where it's like, we can actually just give our money directly to people that we think are creating great content. It's like, that's such a pure experience for the consumer and the creator.
Yeah. And I think the evidence of says, okay, well, how does Zion make money? The day we launched, we said that this is not free. Right? If you're a creator and you want to create a community on the app and you're running and we're helping you run that technical infrastructure, have your own node, just pay us for that. That's how it works. Like that's how we make money is the creators that use the app pay us. Creators are our customers effectively. And then they can go and monetize their audiences more effectively. But we didn't launch and said, oh, everyone's free. Everyone can create stuff on free. And then a year later, like, how do we make money? Like, how does this work, right? This is the problem. There's hundreds of these social networks out there. Everyone's trying a new thing every day. They have no concept of monetization. They don't know how they're going to continue. Yeah, maybe they have users, maybe they have a little bit of adoption, but the business side is never thought through. This was an assumption that I made in early 2021. It was like, this is how a social network should be built. We launched and people were like, oh, you can't just charge people for a social network. What happened a month ago, right? Elon Musk says, you know what, we can't monetize with ads anymore. This has got to be the new way to do it. I mean, he's really smart.
Yes.
He's really smart. He knows what he's doing. Like
$8.
Trust in Elon, $8 is what it is. And that's how we launch, right? So the fundamental business model is also inherently different. That's like when I'm talking about the energy, is that these other things that were started, we're like, you know what, we're going to get users and then we're going to find a way to make money through ads. That's what everyone's intention is. And that's poor, because what you're doing is that you're making these individuals users instead of members. You know, users are what, drug dealers call the people that buy their drugs.
Definitely. Are there any other platforms out there? I know you mentioned that there's hundreds. Are there other platforms out there that you think are doing a pretty good job, or there are aspects where you're like, damn, this is good. Maybe we can incorporate some of this into what we're doing?
No,
not
honestly. Because I think everyone is actually building platforms. And I think what's different about what Zion's doing is, language is important to me, is we're building an opinionated protocol. And what I mean by protocol means that we're building a set of technical tools that people can use to build systems. And then we're building an opinionated client, which is the Zion app. But the Zion app is just one reference to the backend. It's a reference to a DID, a decentralized web node for data storage and payments. But the question I also ask myself is that, okay, if you took the primitives of a decentralized login, authorization, messaging and data storage, and payments, if you take any two of those three primitives, you could build 99% of the apps on the App Store. We just built a social network to start. But what are other things you can do with those primitives? And that's the thesis of like Web 5, right? Where that's the stuff the Jack's team at Block and Daniel and Buckner and all them, they're building the decentralized web node architecture, and we're just following along that path. We're adding a piece, which is Lightning payments. We're building an opinionated community platform, right? We're like, so creators can go build these communities. But that's the thesis. The thesis is like, what if all apps on the web were interoperable? What if Instagram and Facebook and Airbnb can all talk to each other? What if 20 apps can send money to each other? What if like Venmo and PayPal could send money to each other? I don't know if they can. They're owned by the same company, but like, I don't know. I can't compare two payment apps, right? Like what if, you know what I'm saying?
100%.
But that's how Zion works, right?
Yes.
Every Lightning wallet, every Lightning app that has Lightning sats, I can say receive, doesn't matter. It can instantly send sats into your Lightning wallet on Zion interoperably. And then you could pay creators for doing stuff and send money back. And like, it makes money liquid. It makes money free.
Yeah.
That only works with Bitcoin. It doesn't work with anything else. Like all the other stuff is nonsense. That can't work.
Yeah.
Do you think that centralization has gotten to the point where in order for this decentralized world to work, there needs to be this cataclysmic event that shifts the paradigm in a way that people who don't even recognize the shift is happening? Like they just have to opt into this new way of thinking?
I don't know about, I don't like cataclysms.
Yeah.
Generally, personally, I'm not a fan of them.
Yeah.
But I mean, I hope not.
Yeah.
I hope not. I think that what we did wake up to though is if you look at January 6th or 7th or whenever they kicked off Trump, like you're like, wow, these people, because they're just people. They're like, people call it Twitter. It's not Twitter. It's some woke employee at Twitter. Remember that. It's not Twitter, right? It's like someone there at Twitter was like, you know what? We're going to kick off the president of the United States and never let him back on. Come on. Like that was a bad decision.
It's new precedent.
All of the thing, like the sitting president, like I get it. Maybe like ban him for a week or be like, hey, you can't talk anymore because you did some stuff, but he's still not back.
Yeah.
And someone else had to buy it for them to bring him back.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me. Yeah. So that to me, if I was like looking, I was like, that's a wake up. Like I would wake up from that and be like, fuck, like we don't have control over these things. And they're as big as nation states. Right? If you think about Zuckerberg, he's an individual that owns one of the largest networks in the world with no land. And he can control how his fiefdom works and who's allowed to say what and who's not allowed to say what. It's his fiefdom, right? That to me is an incredible paradigm that we don't truly understand.
100%.
Because we're spending a lot of time on these fucking things.
Yeah.
We're spending a lot more time on these. I notice myself like, fuck, I'm in my phone too much. I'm in this app. I'm in this. It's how I communicate with everyone. They control a lot of our lives in that way. And the question is, how do we give power back to the people?
Yeah.
Because often, like what you just described on Instagram, you're not even creating content for people.
No.
You're creating content for an algorithm. The hope is that it serves it to somebody else. But that's not the way the world works.
Yes.
Like it works like this. Like we're sitting in a room, we're talking, there's ideas. There isn't a third-party algorithm that says, oh, Justin, you can't say that to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird paradigm.
It's so weird. The to go back to what you had said before too, the deplatforming of Trump is interesting because I remember Dorsey, I think he publicly endorsed the deplatforming. And then to see the text messages that were leaked to Elon, I wonder if he actually supported that decision or if he felt like he needed to just say that to save face on behalf of the company.
I don't know.
What do you think about that?
I think he was in a really challenging position as the CEO of Twitter.
I can't even imagine.
I think he was in a tough place, and I think now that he's like so focused on Bitcoin, it's like it's clear what's like where his heart is, and I feel his heart is in like a really good place, and I have a lot of gratitude for Jack. Thanks, Jack. A lot of gratitude for you, bro. Thank you. Yeah.
Justin, I'm curious, have you always had this feeling of like self-sovereignty or just being a strong individual in your DNA?
So, you know, it's interesting. I was at my parents' house for Thanksgiving and my dad told me a story and we were talking about like kind of leadership. And he was telling me, he's like, this is not new. Like, so in 1993 or 1994, there was an earthquake in Northridge. I was 5 years old. I was in Northridge during the time. And so the house is shaking. And my dad tells me a story that like I grabbed him and my mom and says, we got to go downstairs.
Yeah.
Like I was the one that dragged them down the stairs. So like, we got to go. And he's telling me this story is like, you know, this leadership thing you have of who you are has been with you since you were a child before you understood. I don't remember the story. I was 5. I don't remember. But like he specifically said that. He's like, this has been in you. It's innate in you. And I think that is a lot of energy to hold. And that's why I do what I do, because I think that I am very capable of it. I'm one of the people capable of that experience. And I do want to provide the best I can and do the best I can, because I think I'm built a little bit differently.
Yeah. That's why it seems like everything you're doing at Zion was inevitable. Like imagining you being 28 and putting your so much skin in the game that you're literally up to 240 pounds because you're just trying to make this thing work. It's interesting because I'm 28, Harry's 29, so we'd be right around the same age. And just thinking about everything that you're going through, realizing like you have this innate desire to be a leader and want to just continue to do more with your life. But at the same time, you're like, well, I just sold this company. I don't really need to work. Like it's a dream for a lot of people, but for you, I feel like it's just inevitable that eventually it would have led to whatever the next thing is that you're supposed to be doing.
I think so. I think that there's moments in your life that give you a chance to like wake up. It's like knock, knock, like,
yeah,
wake up, Neo.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like moments like that.
Yeah,
totally.
And I love Matrix references, by the way. That's where the name Zion comes from. So
you're a fan.
Huge. The Matrix, the documentary, is one of the best films ever created. And if you heard my reference, it's a documentary. It's not
fiction.
It's a documentary.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, every day it seems like we're getting closer to that, right? Is it a simulation? Is it not? The older I get, like manifestation powers increases as time goes on. So I wonder, it's like, am I getting better at playing this game? Do I know more cheat codes? It's very strange. Very, very strange what's happening. Yeah. It's very weird.
I feel like the digital age is like finally starting to bear roots into like how we operate as people, almost biologically, right? Like we're existing in a physical world, but there's this world out there that, I mean, you even described it earlier, like your digital persona or like your digital self, like how people see you online. It's like, yeah, that it like is part of you, but it's, you know, it's not you. Like, you know, it's only a representation.
What's amazing, I had a talk with a friend the other day about this. It's like, you know, Jack shared a tweet about a month ago about Zion. It says Web 5 is happening, and he links to a blog post that I wrote in June about Zion V2. And if you look at that, it's like, it's just some pixels on a screen. It's just a tweet. It's not like, it's nothing. Totally. It's just a tweet on a screen. Some people saw it. But what it changed in the physical world for me personally and so for people around me is incredible. So there's like this digital thing, you know, and maybe it's a bit of like like, what is it in myself that needed to wake up when that happened? Like the attention of that perhaps, or what it is. But if you look at the object is the pixels on a screen from somebody across the world.
Yeah.
But what it's manifested in the physical world to me is incredible, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's an incredible manifestation of how this digital and, real world kind of matching. But what it is, it's just interesting to even think. It's just pixels on a screen that created this groundswell.
Yeah. In the physical sense, it's pixels on a screen, but really what it is it's this amazing proof of concept that everything you've been working on for 2 years, let alone the decade of this thesis kicking around in your head, there's validity to it, and it's catching the eyeballs of like some of the biggest creators ever, right? So I just can't even imagine how, it must have, I don't know if cool is the right word or fulfilling, but
gratitude, it's amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Can you, I feel like we skipped over an important part of your story, which is your first business.
Oh yeah, that's
it. And, one of the things that Brett and I talk a lot about is sort of setting a good example for people who are, or what would us 5 years ago want to know about being a 23-year-old entrepreneur, or being a 23-year-old who's just entering the real world, leaving college, trying to do something on their own, trying to make some money. So you have a unique perspective. You started a business right after college.
Yeah, no, about a year after college.
After college.
24, yeah.
Could you just unpack, how you got into the business, what made you want to start it?
Yep. Yeah.
All that.
So I knew I wanted to be in mobile. So I had 2 jobs. One was a mobile marketing intern at the Walt Disney Company, circa 2009, and like 2 years after the iPhone. So I was like, I knew I wanted to be in mobile. So my first job out of college was at a mobile banner ad company. And I was like, man, we're just spending money to put these like little banner ads on mobile websites. People are paying like $6 to $20 CPMs. And then Instagram gets bought by Facebook for $1 billion. And I look at like, oh, someone has like 60,000 followers. It's like 60 divided by 1,000, 60 times 20. It's a lot of money. Do you guys do stuff on your Instagram? People are like, oh, it's a pain in the ass. There has to be like contracts, and it's like my agent has to do it, and then I get paid after like 2 months, so I don't really do it because it's not easy. I was like, oh, okay. Is there an app? Is there an app that you can use so an influencer and a brand can talk to each other? It's like, cool. No, there wasn't an app in 2013, 2012. There wasn't an app. So I built the first app to do that. So it was just like a thinking of like, there's a problem and no one's figured out the problem. It's so obvious this is going to be a thing, right? People follow other people on the internet, right? It's obvious this is going to happen, and it's going to get bigger, and it's only going to get bigger. It's only going to get bigger. Facebook really, like the way Facebook worked, like you couldn't really do influencer on Facebook because there was like pages and profiles, not really communities, and you didn't really follow people on Facebook as more your friends. It was so obvious this would happen. I want to build an app to do that. And that was how it started. It was just like, I was trying to solve a problem. I will say that app was not supposed to be as big as it was. It was just trying to be like a kind of a passive business. But I remember this meeting, it was end of 2013. I walked into Fox movie studio and I'm showing the app, and it's like the head of the studio. She spends hundreds of millions of dollars a year in ads. And she's like, this is great. This is like an app. Like, let's do a test. Here's 110 grand. I was like, wait, what?
110 grand.
That's unbelievable.
I was like, what? I was like, okay. So I went and calculated in my mind. I was like, okay, I'm gonna spend this much. And then I made like 60 grand in my first 6 weeks. And that was double what I had made in the last 2 years. And I was like, oh shit. Like, this is a thing. Like, this is a thing. Like, imagine 24. Like, that's a lot of money.
You're the richest man alive.
Like, at that time, like, that was a lot of fucking money for me. $60,000 in profit was a lot of money for me at the time.
Yes. And
I'm like, fuck, dude, this is a thing. This could be a thing. And like that year I made $500,000. And then the next year I made $1.5 million. And then the next year I made $3.5 million. And I sold my company. Like after that, like I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Like this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it was, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm getting lost in my own answer.
No, this is good. Keep ripping. Yeah.
And so it was just one of those things like, oh, this is a thing. I'm creating value for them, value for the creator. I make a little bit of money on the side. This is all good for everybody.
Yeah.
This is a great deal, right?
Yeah.
All they do is they look at their phone, they create a photo, take a selfie, post it, get paid that Friday. Boom, boom, boom. I make money in between. This is going to be awesome. And then it just evolved, right? But the underlying of it was tech. Like I knew that if the technology wasn't brilliant, you'd just be another agent.
Yeah.
And there's tons of these fucking people. Like I didn't want to be that. I want to be the technical thing. That's where like the nerdy side of me is really like, that's the hacker. That's the hacker in me. Like I was talking to the painter, but I was being the hacker.
I like that mindset of being able to wear both hats. It's like, it gives you this ability to, be the person who can see the whole field, not just like, the engineer who's building it, but like, hey, how can this be applied across a bunch of different things, which probably helped you grow the business, I imagine, like seeing the problem, building a solution, and then just being able to say, hey, who else has this problem? Like, let me go run around and see who else will pay for this.
100%. And I think that the other thing, talking about being young and getting into this young, is I had a lot of like product iteration cycles very early. So because I was working 7 days a week for 4 years, 80 hours plus a week, talking to customers all the time, talking to creators, like I just had so many reps to learn from very early. Like I probably have as much reps as someone that might be like 65 that's barely getting into their stuff at 27, because I'm just doing a lot more. And I fucking failed so much. I fucked up so many times, and but I learned from it. I learned from those mistakes, and I had so many mistakes, and then learning so many mistakes and learning so many mistakes and learning. And I'm fucking up every day.
Yeah.
Every single day I'm fucking up more. The difference between me and most people is that they fuck up and they think that they did something wrong and they got to end it and they have to stop. And I don't. I just keep going and getting better and learning, and I have more data. I think I have more data. That's the way to describe it. Like the AI has more data. Like that's how all this stuff works, right? The more data it has. Tesla's AI is amazing because a fuck ton of data.
Yeah.
And I think I have a lot of data because I just have so many things that I do.
What sort of advice would you give to younger brother or someone who's, you 3-5 years ago, if they were, asking you questions about, I'm trying to break into, get rid of my 9-to-5 job and break into the entrepreneurial world, or whatever it is, just trying to build something. Yeah.
I mean, the first question I would ask is like, what's the why? What's the why behind why you want to do it? Do you really want to do it? I think there's a lot of like sexiness in entrepreneurship right now. A lot of people are like, oh, hustle.
Yes.
But a lot of people aren't built for it. So I actually take a step back and say, what's the why? And are you willing to sacrifice X for X? I don't know. I don't think a lot of people are built for it. I don't recommend everyone to be an entrepreneur. I think it's a bad idea because I think they can hurt themselves more than they can gain. And I can know pretty quickly if you're actually made to do it. So it's not a popular opinion, actually. People are like, oh yeah, go. Like, I don't think that's the right thing. I don't. I think, this world is made for a certain number of people to go and lead and build, and then a certain number of people most not to, in fact.
When you say that you can tell very quickly when someone's wired for that entrepreneurial path, are there certain characteristics that they're showing, or is it just kind of like this X factor intangible thing that someone either has or they don't have it?
They had to have shown it very early on in their career.
Okay.
Right? Like it was very clear when I was in middle school, I was going to do this. It was very, very clear in college that I was going to do this. Right? Like I'll give an example. In college, I didn't have a good GPA. I actually pretty much flunked out of high school because I was under 2.0. So I went to community college for 2 years, and then I went to Cal Poly Pomona for my undergrad. Probably had like a 2-point-something GPA in college, right? But I was the president of the marketing club, founded the marketing club for 3 years, student of the year for 2 years, part of my fraternity, very involved in my fraternity, got this random role in student government. And then the dean of my university calls me in like a week before my graduation. He's like, hey, like, we've never allowed someone like you on stage because you don't have a good GPA, but I think you're going to do well. He made it like a joke. He's like, either you're going to go to prison and do really well. Yeah. I was like, okay, thanks. And so we'd like for you to speak in front of the university as like the representative of your class. So it was very clear early on that I was going to do things because they noticed that early on. So I think there's early indicators of that. Like if you start something early and you can kind of smell it. But people can also be very successful later on in life, but I think there's early indicators, but that's just my data. Again, I don't have enough data to look at everyone around the world. And I'm not trying to look at the outliers. The outliers are incredible individuals, the billionaires that publicly, but what are the people that are running like really successful companies that you don't hear about? Because there's millions of those people around the world.
Something you said earlier that was really interesting to both of us is this concept of the word no. and how important that is for you and how much you guard your time, right? When you've achieved a certain level of success, it's something that you've earned. But there are obviously people that are almost able to break into that and you be willing to give them your time, whether it's like the way someone writes a DM or an email or like pitches you in a certain way. So I'm just curious, like, are there things that you look for where you're like, oh, this is awesome? Or like things that stick out in the past where like, yeah, I'll give this person my time or meet with them for coffee or something like that?
I don't know if I want to give these secrets out on a podcast.
You don't
like
have to.
What's the breakthrough? I don't remember. What did you guys DM me?
Harry did it.
Dude, I don't even know. I think I pitched our show. I just said we're talking about nutrition and like the fundamental problems in the health system. Know you're a Bitcoiner in the area and would love to have you on. Something simple like that.
There was something that either there's someone that I know that follows you or there was something with that I was like, because for some reason I look at who might know this person. What's the mutual connection? Can I figure something out? And then there's just this like gut feeling of like yes or no.
Yes.
It's like, so I was like, this feels, fuck yeah, let's do that. Because it's either a fuck yes or a fuck no. Very simple. Very binary, at least for most of the stuff. So I think the other thing is, what is someone like trying to create in terms of value for me? Like what's the reciprocity? If it's like very clear that this is like a one directional relationship, I don't have time for such nonsense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, how many requests do you get from people a week asking to get coffee or something where it's like a one-way relationship?
I don't know. Not a lot. Like maybe like 50.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not a lot. Yeah. I don't know. If I look at my DMs right now, there's like the side of DMs that I don't really like answer. It's probably like 50 in there.
How do you manage that much inbound traffic?
I don't. I just don't look at it.
Yeah.
I'll look at it quickly and I don't look at it. I try not to be on this stuff too long.
Yeah.
It's really bad for you.
It's hard not to be. Like I definitely, I'm pretty similar where I'll check my phone and if it's like top of priority, like I have my priorities for the day like laid out well ahead of time. So it's like, got to get through that stuff before like the new things start to jump to the top of the priority list. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that if you want to get to me, it's really simple. I'm pretty public. I'll answer, but just know like, what's the thing? Why do you want to talk to me?
Yeah.
Like why? Like I'm not that interesting.
Yeah.
I don't like what do you want to talk to me about? Right. If you want to learn about what we're doing, I'm tons of podcasts. You can listen to everything, but why do you want to talk to me?
100%.
I'm not that interesting. I don't think I'm that interesting.
You're just being humble, but I think a lot of people would beg to differ. But I feel like this is the type of conversation where for me, it's like, it's hard to not be optimistic knowing that we live in a world, whether it's Twitter, Zion, Instagram, email, you're one cold DM or email away from changing the course of your life. You're one tweet from Jack away from changing the course of your life.
Yeah.
And I think that you've tweeted things similar to that. I was scrolling through your Twitter prior to this conversation, but I'd love to unpack that with you because I feel like you're definitely a huge optimist and I think we need more of that in the world too.
Yeah, you're literally one decision away from changing your life. One small thing that you can change, one message, one like, oh, I'm going to try that. If you want to change your life, you have the full autonomy and control to do that. You have full control and autonomy to do that. And I think some people are just so comfortable in the day-to-day that they don't want to. But if you wanted it, like the thing that you have to realize if you want an extraordinary life is you have to create an extraordinary life.
Yeah.
One's not just going to happen for you. I don't think it does. I just personally, you have to make it.
When was that clear to you?
Very early on. Very, very early on. There's this like push, pull. But if I want to be extraordinary, I have to like master to be extraordinary. Like really, really push that. It's not just going to happen. I can't sit in a cage and build what maybe is an extraordinary life. I don't think so. I mean, I'm sure monks are really happy, but I don't think they're like individually changing the world.
Were you thinking that when you started at Disney, like, hey, this is just a means to an end. Like I'm going to start something and like.
No. I knew I was going to run one of these companies when I was older.
Yeah.
I was like, cool, I'm an intern now, but like I'm going to run this. Like I remember walking and there's a building where there's, Bob Iger was working. I was like looking, I was like, I'll probably run one of these when I'm older. No question about it. It was not even a hesitation. My when I got that job, I don't know, the girl that hired me, her name is Kimberly. She lives in Austin now. So imagine it was 2008, 2009. She's like, she said it, I think she said at the end of the interview, she's like, I think I'm going to work for you at some point. So you want to be our intern? But I think I'm going to work for you at some point.
She just had that feeling.
Yeah, she's like, it's one of those things. I remember that. I remember that conversation.
Yeah.
And she's probably right.
Yeah. Growth versus a fixed mindset is interesting because there are definitely so many characteristics, including the ability to believe to yourself, where you definitely can nurture it. But then there's certain people, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a gift from God or genetics or whatever, where you just have that trust and that faith that like, yeah, I'm going to fucking run this building, or hey, things are going to work out, or hey, I'm going to be a pro athlete. It's just so interesting how some people just have it and some people need to cultivate it and nurture it. It just depends who you are.
And it's so obvious. Like to me, like every day it just like reinforces. Cause I know I think a little bit differently than most people.
Yeah.
I just think like what I think about, how I say it, how I approach it. Like every time I even meet somebody new, like now that I'm getting older, is like this guy, like you're a little, I never like talked to the person. I've been there for 5 minutes and they're like, there's something like, what is going on with you? This is, you're a little different. You're a little weird.
Yes.
Like, yeah, I'm weird. I'm a weird dude.
One of the things that Harry and I say a lot is that you can't fake energy, right? It's like some people just, like I'm reading this biography on Teddy Roosevelt right now, and they said the thing that made him so different was that he was this unstoppable force of energy. He just lit up every room that he walked into.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you necessarily need to be that, but I feel like you know off the bat whether someone has that energy and you can't fake it.
Yeah. And that's an extraordinary individual that lived an extraordinary life.
I feel like this ability to believe in yourself is so powerful, but were there ever any insecurities or things that just like gave you a little bit of doubt as you were starting things?
Every day I feel doubt. Like this week, there was probably 2 days like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, who am I? Like, I can't be as good as these people. I can't compete against Elon Musk. I'm kind of doing it right now. I can't do that. He's way better than me. What am I doing?
Yeah.
I'm going to fail. Like, this is going to suck. Every day I'm questioning myself. This is not all fine and dandy over here. It sucks sometimes. I mean, like, I'm just like, what am I doing? Why am I spending every waking hour doing this? Right. And then I just I come to stillness. I was like, well, if I quit, I'm gonna have a fuck ton of regret. Right? Like I can, but quitting's easy. And people quit way too early. That's what I think the general thesis is. Like people they're almost there and they just stop right before they get there. Like, oh, I'm gonna do this Ironman. And then they're like, oh fuck, I can't do an Ironman. And I started training like, no, I can't do that. I can't get to that. You can, everyone can. It's easy.
Yeah.
These things are simple. But every day I'm questioning it. Every day I'm questioning myself. There isn't a day that goes by, actually. I haven't had a day that went by that was like, oh, fuck. Like there was a moment. But there are better days. And there's days that I'm really confident and I feel really good. I'm like, fuck yeah, this is going to be awesome. I think it's also the thinking of like infinite games versus finite games. Most people have this concept of like everything is so like it's a finite game. Like this, if I don't do this, then it's, but I'm changing my mindset about like, I'm living an infinite game, right? At the end of the day, what happens? Nothing fucking changes.
Yeah.
Right? Like my life doesn't change at all. Like if this doesn't work out, nothing fucking changes in my life.
Right.
Nothing will materially change. There are other things that would materially change my life. Like, I got hit by a car, I died, those kinds of things, but related to business, not as much.
Yeah. Are you a spiritual person when it comes to? Yeah,
I definitely am.
And how does that play a role in your business pursuits? I mean, I think that faith is obviously an important part of a lot of people's lives, but just being able to kind of anchor yourself in something that will always be there for you. I imagine what you're going through right now, right? Like trying to do the impossible, basically build something that's never been built before. Having faith definitely probably anchors you in some level of belief.
I think that the universe is working in my favor. I think God, what we call God, whatever you call God, is definitely working in my favor because I'm on a track to do something what I believe is like really good for the world and like has a really good intention and mindset, and all levels of it I'm executing it with the highest level of integrity, and I think God is on my side. A week after we launched Zion publicly, I was in Costa Rica doing ayahuasca with a good group of like a couple of our investors and like a good group of friends. And it was like very clear vision to me, like keep the path, like it's already been set. This will be what it is, and just keep going and keep pushing it. And, like the world needs Zion. Like, and the words were very clear. Like it needs this thing, like it needs this, and it's already been written in some ways. So that's kind of the spiritual path of like, I definitely have spent time both like in dogmatic religion and obviously like kind of South American religions. And I've sat in a lot of plant medicine ceremonies to build that clarity in myself that it's definitely a true path, and the universe is working 100% in my favor to make this a success.
Did you have that mental model prior to experimenting with plant medicine?
100%. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and I was quite involved in like the retreats of my like kind of the really religious retreats of my Catholic school. So I've had this like deep relationship with God. And, you know, when I was 19, I was in quite a bad car accident on the freeway. I rolled on the freeway like 3 times. And so like the first thing I said, like as the car is rolling over, like, God, please don't let me die. God, please don't let me die. God, please don't let me die. So it was the first person I talked to. And so I've had a deep relationship with spirit. Like when I had my seizure, I kind of left my body and like went into the light of I was in a dentist chair, you know, they turn on that light and like I went inside of it. And then I followed this path that was like following another version of myself, which is kind of weird to say. And now I have this like weird relationship with like this spirit that is death in my life. And I kind of have this like cool, like, hey, what's up? Like you're here, you know? So I play around with those two dichotomies of life, like God and death. And so definitely like a part of me. Like I definitely believe in spirit. There's no question to me that there's something that's beyond us. And
how old were you when you took part in your first plant medicine ceremony?
Psilocybin was the first, was in my fraternity house, 3.5 grams, 2009. 2009. No. 2008.
Are you like Tim Ferriss and a bunch of other like very well-known people are huge supporters, Michael Pollan, of the powers of plant medicine? I imagine it sounds like you've had some pretty strong experiences. Do you think it has a role in the future of just how we treat like PTSD, trauma, depression, all these different things?
It should. I think it should. I think that, you know, people should expand their mind to it in the right setting. I think set and setting is very important for psychedelics. I don't think it should be taken lightly. I think it can be like certain things that maybe are considered psychedelic can be addictive. So it's about the right setting and the individual and your mindset. But I do think it's a powerful experience for your inner peace.
When so you mentioned Kyle Kingsbury, we actually were lucky enough to have him on the show.
Yes. I love Kyle.
Such a good human
I love
being.
that man so much.
Big old bear.
He's fucking
heart of gold.
Kyle, I love you.
Yeah. But it was
I'll send him this. Like, you got to listen to this podcast.
Yeah,
we shouted you out.
Please do. Yeah.
Love that guy.
But such a good guy, such a good conversation. But it was interesting. Remember, one of the things that he mentioned to us was like, if you're going to fight at a high level or play sports at a high level, I don't recommend doing ayahuasca. Didn't he say something like that?
Yeah, because I think it spiritually changes you to at the point where you almost lose your motivation to be like the top. Not lose your motivation. That's definitely not the right wording, but it's like that
ego death or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
like
the edge. Like, you lose the edge.
You
perhaps?
lose the edge a little bit. Is what his perspective was, which like makes you think like, you know, reevaluate your life from a more holistic view. And
probably that was for him. That was his personal experience, right?
But different for you though.
Yeah, I don't think it just changed the game parameters, right? It changed the parameter. The game's the same, just changed the parameters. I'm still trying to do the same thing. I just have a lot more data of like, how am I going to play this game out? There's also this whole other, like, I think what it really changed was I know that the universe is working in my favor and not against me. Mm-hmm. It's in my favor.
Yeah.
Really, like, it's like,
I think one of the things that we try to talk a bunch about is just, I mean, we're talking about health mostly, but it's really the nutrition side of things. But we're trying to weave in, you know, the mental side and the spiritual side. We've touched on the spiritual side. We've touched on some of the things you focus on in terms of nutrition, but that mental side of things. How do you stay sharp when you've got all these like high stress things going on? How do you make sure that you show up every day with the same level of energy and same level of output that you do day in and day out?
I don't know. Like, I wish I had some meaningful thing to tell you.
Yeah.
Right. And I know some people have all these things that they've learned and they do this. I have practices. Like meditation and things that I'm like always centering myself around failure and that. But I just get up and do it. I don't it's a lot of people like I just get up and do it. That's it. I just do the job.
Yeah.
I get up and I don't stop. That's what I do. I just get up and do the job. And every day that goes by, I just got up and did the job. And there's days I don't want to do it's like the days you don't want to go to the gym. And then after you did your workout, you're like, fucking glad I went to the gym.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how most of my days end. Cause I don't necessarily like, oh man, I could fuck off and go wake surfing today.
Totally.
I could just play pickleball all day. I could go gym all day, go sauna all day. I have shit to do.
Yeah.
And then I feel a bit like, fuck, I'm really glad I got that out of the way.
Yes.
I'm really glad I did that. Because it's very weird when you don't have to do it. Like, it's a very weird place to be like, I don't have to do this.
Yeah.
Because people are like, oh, I have to have a job because I want to like pay for this and my family and blah, blah, blah. I don't have to do this.
Did you listen to David's show on Rogan's podcast?
No.
That was one of the things that he talked about that was so interesting is he was like living a life where he basically doesn't have to do anything that he doesn't want to do. He can basically pay for anything. He doesn't need to create art. He doesn't have to do anything. He could freaking pay someone to feed him or if he wants to, but like that's where all the gold is the struggle. And even when we're asking this question, it's like we're hoping that you're going to share this like nugget or this silver bullet that we've never heard before, but it all just comes back to like, just fucking did it. I just did the work. I just show up every day and just press forward, and that's where all the gold is.
Yeah, and I wish there was. Like, I wish I could be like, oh, how'd you do the Ironman and how was that? It's like, no, you just train. You just get up and like Mondays are swim, Tuesdays are bike and swim.
Yeah.
Wednesdays are run bike.
Yes.
Wednesdays are just swim. Like Fridays are swim and run. Saturdays are swim and long run. And Sundays are 8-hour bike rides. And you do that every week for a year and a half. And then you do an Ironman at 12 hours. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Right.
Like most things are quite simple. We just fucking make them really complicated. Because we want to make our lives complicated to feel important and special.
You know what?
It's fucking easy.
Everyone just wants the secret sauce. Everyone wants to be told that it's easier than it actually is.
Fuck
like,
no, there's no magic pill.
Yeah.
There isn't a thing that you're going to take. Like, you know, maybe you could take $12,000 worth of steroids a month and you'll get ripped, but the guy still has to work out.
Definitely. Twice
Still
a
got to
day.
work out. You got to do something. You can't, there is no fucking magic pill. There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
It's just time. It's more rapid iteration cycles of yourself and learning and more data, and you get better, 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 and you learn from it.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about doing an Ironman is you get to see that progression from the time you sign your name on that dotted line to the time that you actually cross the finish line. The difference, it's two different people. The person that signs up for the race doesn't know what's going to happen. And then you that's doing the 8-hour bike rides, the swims in the morning, the training, the weightlifting. And then you go out on the course and you feel this unbelievable connection to the people that are out there because you know that they've put in that same grind for the last year.
They suffered. You know, they suffered because they're there. They showed up.
Totally. You see some people that are like 60, 70 pounds overweight, which is so crazy because it takes every
Savage.
excuse off the table.
Yeah.
That's why for you, when you're like, no, I believe that everyone can do an Ironman, I feel the same way.
By the way, I think everyone should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because everything you thought the day before you did Ironman changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like your limitations, like one thing that's very weird is the moment I crossed the finish line, even though I fucking was hurting and I sat down, I was like, I think if I really wanted to, I could do this again right now. If I really fucking wanted to, I could do it twice in one day.
Yeah.
And that fucking changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, damn, dog. You just swam 2.5 miles, biked 112 or whatever, and then ran a marathon. You think you'd do it again? Like, fuck yeah, I could do it again. That's gangster. That's fucking gangster. Like the power that gives you as an individual of your physical capabilities as a human being is just mind expanding, surpassing. We're extraordinary fucking creatures. And I think the problem with, and this is like going to go my like problem with society, is that we're a little bit fucking lazy. And we're not pushing our boundaries as much as we can because we don't have to. Society has made us so fucking lazy that our food can be delivered, cooked to us with this garbage seed oils or whatever. Like everything can be done for us. And we're choosing that. And we think that that's a honorable life.
Yeah.
To choose this laziness. And that's why, what is it? 50+% of people are overweight. They're just not experienced. Like,
70.
why? It's horrendous.
Yes. We went to church on Sunday, and with Thanksgiving just coming and going, the pastor Scott spoke about gratitude. And one of the things that he talked about is that we're so blessed and we live in such abundance and our lives are so good that it's so hard to actually feel gratitude because things are so damn convenient, to your point. That's what you just reminded us of.
Yeah. And you gotta suffer, right? People don't want to say this like, oh, and what I mean by suffering, I don't want people to misconstrue what I'm trying to say. You have to have these like really challenged difficulties to grow from. Like, you know this in fitness. In order for muscles to get larger or more impact, is you have to push the system, right? But we've been designed to relax and be de-stressed because, you know, we always had to like go find food and go do all that other stuff. But now food's coming to us, so we're just like bigger. And so we have to create this innate new level of pushing our bodies. So do an Ironman and then message me about it. Yeah. And then we could talk about it. I mean, it would be awesome if someone like listened to this pod was like, fuck, I'm going to do an Ironman. I just signed up. See in the comments.
That would be dope.
Who's going to sign up? Let's go. Send me, tag us.
That's why we're going to sign Jose up for one. We're all going to do one together.
My guy, you want to do an Ironman?
Y'all, I'm down.
That would be
damn,
sick.
dog.
How cool would that be?
Fucking
all
gangster.
4 of us.
That'd be gangster.
2023.
Let's do it.
Is that enough time for me?
Hogs and cogs.
It's
6 months.
It's all about, are you going to put enough training in?
I have
It's
to
not
listen
about,
to this conversation. I got to.
I mean, maybe.
But there is something about this. It's more about the process. Everyone says, you know, trust the process, or you know, everyone who is successful knows that the path getting to a point is always the thing that you look back on and you actually have like those amazing memories and feelings of, hey, we shared a connection on this path to greatness, or, you know, we had all these hard things that we had to overcome, and eventually we got to the point that we wanted to get to. So to me, it's like in today's world, we're so sterilized that we don't even really understand like what it means to get through a process of struggle. Okay, a little win, and you just keep building it and keep building it. It's like that whole process of success is so lost on a lot of people. It's tough. I feel like we're almost numb to it at this point.
Yeah, I think it's the concept also of like low and high time preference on things.
Yeah.
Like, to come back a little bit to Bitcoin, is like just having this like increase in time preference, like just like expand everything out. Everyone wants to get rich quick. Everyone wants to doesn't work.
Totally.
Doesn't work. Like, things need time. Like, look how nature evolves. Look how, like, go watch a tomato, like become a tomato.
Definitely.
Takes time. Go watch a tree grow.
Yeah.
Right. Like, we have this like instant gratification culture in so many ways. We instantly want this. We instantly want this. We instantly want this. But like, it's not always like slowing down, but it's like growth is like, we're here. I have this, like, when I was preparing for my brain surgery, I came to this like conclusion that our entire life is preparing us for the day we die. Like, everything that you do is preparing for that one moment. Is the moment that like everything leaves and it's done, and you leave everyone behind, you leave your family, you leave your friends, and you're gone. Everything you've done up until that moment is what you've prepared for. And how are you going to leave that day? Are you going to leave with more friends? Are you going to leave like in a good impact? Like, that's the most important day of your life. The day that you die.
Do you fear death?
No. I've been quite close to it, but no. Used to. Right? Used to. Definitely used to a lot. Like, I want more time, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting, like, see how long I end up here and what this video looks like eventually, right? That's the interesting thing about documenting this stuff, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You know, like, it's so interesting to me that, you know, and I'm honored, thank you for having me, that like we get to have these conversations, and like, I hope I have kids. Like, if I have kids and those kids have kids, like at some point they can look back and be like, damn, like, I just imagine like if I could see what my grandfather, like if he did something like this, like I do this because of the interesting documentation, like, oh man, our great grandfather, when he was 34, he was like doing this company and he was on all these podcasts, and they're there forever because they're on the internet. And like, I could go back and see that person. Like, can you imagine like we could do that? Like, I do this also for thinking of that. Like, I'm creating content in my life for a library for potentially my kids and my grandkids. Yeah. I don't even have a girlfriend, right? Like, I'm single, and I don't like, but I want kids. I really do. And I think about that story, right? Like, I do with my parents now. We have like a text message group, and I send them all my podcasts. Like, this week I sent them 4. and videos, and my dad gets to see, like, even though my dad's not here in Austin, he lives in LA, like he gets to see me grow in this way and talk, and he watches everything I do. And I just think about that. It's like really interesting of like this potential documentation of our life and like in-depth conversations of like the thinking of that individual. I could potentially see that my great grandkids have an understanding of who I am as a human being. I don't know my great grandfather at all. I just know that he existed.
Yeah.
Like, but I don't know him. I don't know like how he thought every day. I don't know what he spent his life force energy on. I don't know who his friends were. And that's just such an interesting thing of like where we're like living now is like in 100 years, like if everything like goes well and like that data will be remembered.
Yeah.
I think that's just interesting.
Yeah. I think like legacy is plays a huge part in my life. Looking backwards, like I had a relationship with my grandparents, but the mementos were so different. Like you would have like a coin that your grandpa like saved, and you're like, and then you try to fill in the blanks a little bit more. So you do have to be more imaginative. Like, okay, like why did he save this coin? Like, why did he think
what
this
was
important?
this about? Like, who is this person?
Yeah, totally. And so, like you're saying, just being able to document this and share it with people now and forever is so powerful. Being able to create a legacy is, I think, a really powerful message.
And I think the thread here that I'll add to this is that, you know, I want some of this stuff to live on. And right now, right, like the current paradigm, if we think about it technically, is like Facebook disappears, everything disappears. If YouTube disappears, everything disappears. Because you don't own anything on these systems. So the question is like, if you want something to last forever, potentially an idea, a thought, like how could you build something that would potentially allow it to live on forever? How can you create a system that allows content to live on for generations to see? And it's not controlled by one individual. And then that's the cerebral stuff that I go through is like, well, you got to do it in a way that like no company owns it. It's more commons and for the internet as a whole. You got to do something where like the login is not based upon an individual and someone can go search for that content in an open registrar that doesn't involve like a single app. Maybe the data is stored on like a family node, right? Like a family's node, like decentralized web node where all the content goes. Like this is where it like comes back to Zion a little bit, right? Because like my thesis is like Zion will be the last platform anyone ever builds on.
Wow. Which is a powerful thing to think about.
But hear me out on the technical side, right? The reason I'm saying that is because if this works, it will be technically, because it's not another walled garden. It's a series of principled engineering principles of, hey, the login of this app is using the Bitcoin blockchain as a storage of keys, and your ID lives on Bitcoin Core, the most immutable blockchain ever created for everyone. And it's replicated on thousands of machines around the world. And then the data is stored on your own decentralized web node. And then the money that you're using to transfer in that network is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So there is a thing like, oh, you know, what if I want to take my fans with me? What if I want to take this content with me? Well, the cool thing about it all is that every time you post it, you use that key that's sitting on Bitcoin. You signed every message with that key. In perpetuity, you know that that was yours because you took your phone when you posted it, or maybe on your computer, and you signed a message with that identity that's sitting on Bitcoin every single time. So there's now this open registrar of all that content that lives in a library on the largest key storage network in the world, which is Bitcoin. So there's like an interesting like thread we can take down on all these things. And I'm just talking kind of, you know what I mean?
Well, what's fascinating to me, this is just an observation, is we had Drew Armstrong and AJ Scalia on the podcast. They're a part of or CEO and COO of Cathedra Bitcoin, which is a mining company. And they named their company Cathedra for this idea of legacy and just being here forever, like a company that will be here forever. And they're in their 20s, and you know, to hear young people talk about building companies that are going to be here forever and taking that sort of view is, to me, I think rare. I think most people are looking to make that quick buck, or, you know, do something quickly where they can then get out of it and go on to the next thing. So to hear you say something similar, it just made me think of our conversation with them where it's like, hey, let's build a cathedral that will stand the test of time and be here for, you know, as long as Bitcoin's around, which, you know, hopefully is forever.
They also talked about this concept of bringing back beauty into the world. Remember, they were talking about their logo, and we were like, oh, your logo is so aesthetic. What was the thought process behind that? And they were like, we just think the world needs more beauty in it, which I think is interesting because that's not something a lot of people talk about, but it's something we should talk a lot more about, whether it's like beautifying your body or your thoughts or just even the impact you want to have in the world. It's like, it feels like we've kind of lost that as a society.
Yeah, we kind of like edges. If you look at architecture now, like there's like these like very strong edges.
Yeah.
Everything needs to be pure white. You know, like design is like very kind of flat. And I think beauty's if you look at the latest on like some of these like high fashion brands, like people are wearing like trash bags. What the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
It's even like the nature of centralization and decentralization, where centralization, you're able to like outsource a lot of your, whether you're outsource your survival, whether it's ordering food to your doorstep or conveniences, just, ordering things to your doorstep. There's a million of these conveniences, whereas decentralization forces you to actually take ownership of every layer of your survival, and makes you come into contact with that life and death scenario where, hey, if I'm actually not good at this, I could, potentially end up in a bad situation where I'm putting my family in danger, putting myself in danger. So you do have to take this more ownership in this decentralized world. But in a lot of ways, there's a lot of beauty in that, right? Like you're creating this person who is an abundance of these amazing different characteristics and properties.
100%.
Yeah. Justin, I'm curious, who has inspired you along this amazing journey, starting 2 companies, being an Ironman athlete, writing a book? Who's been some of your biggest inspirations?
My dad, for sure. My dad, Mike, he's a force, dude. Like he's like, when I was young, like he taught me the things around business. Like very early on, he was a force of good in my life, and definitely a big inspiration for me, no doubt. I don't know. Outside of like my dad and my family, my mom definitely, just like she was definitely the rock and was there supporting. I don't know someone I would say outside that's like really like, oh, this person I look up to, and I learn from people. I'm like very like observant of things. But like my family unit, very inspirational. That's like what comes up hard and first.
Well, it's such an incredible feeling to make your parents proud. So I'm sure when you're sending your parents and your dad is listening to these podcast clips, that's very special for you too, right?
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome for them. And I think it's like, it's an interesting, they're definitely, I mean, they're first generation here, right? Like they were born in Iran. They come here, and within one generation, like there's like just what's been created, and they're like super proud. And it's Iranian culture is like very proud culture, and I'm happy to be the son for my parents. Like I'm very like it inspires me every day. Yeah, to like be the best and to like continue the legacy of my last name. And Rezvani's badass, and like Papa Rezvani's a badass. So it's very nice. A lot of it is just continuously driven by like, my family. Cause I know also like whatever happens in my life, like that's something I could always come back to. That's the thing that like bugs me. My parents are getting older, and it's like, fuck, man. Like that's like a thing that really fucks with me, because there will be a day and I'm like, fuck, that's like that day. I don't, I was at Burning Man this year, and both my grandparents had died in the last few years. And at Burning Man, there's like a temple. And that's where like a lot of people go and like put photos of the people that had like died since the last burn. And I had a shrine I set up for my grandparents that kind of raised me. And I'm like weeping. I was there for hours, just like really mourning their deaths and that experience. But what came up for me more is like, I will do this eventually for my parents. And that like hurt even more. It's like something that hasn't even happened yet that I have to like think about. And that's like the fragility of the life we live. Like I'm 34 now. My dad's in his 70s. My mom's in her late 60s. And like life's fucking short, dude. Like it's not enough time, not enough time.
Yeah. And we always tend to like romanticize the past, fear the future, and forget about the present moment, where you have all the, you have your parents in your life, you have the people in your life that are making your life fruitful. So it's it's a good reminder to just, sometimes just be in the moment and take everything in for what it is.
100%.
Yeah. The question we love to leave our guests with is just asking you, when you think about just the future of society, are you hopeful or optimistic
or what?
Or not?
Yeah, I'm fucking hopeful.
Yeah.
100%. 100% hopeful. I really think that there's a chance to do greatness, and we have a chance. Because I think people are inherently good, and like in their hearts, like I look in you in your eyes and I feel like you're a good person. I feel like you're a good person. Like we want to like be the best for ourselves selfishly and for the world. And we just maybe didn't have a correct blueprint to do that. Right. And I'm very hopeful. Right. Because I look at I think that the leadership that's occurring in this generation, like I talk about this a lot with like friends my age, is that in 20 years, Elon will be 75. Most of the biggest people you know today, the biggest podcasters, the biggest business magnates, they're going to be in their 70s to their 90s, which if you look at, remember the platform, if you look at the same platform analogy, like people our age will be running the world. And I'm very hopeful for the people that I spend time with.
100%.
And I hope these people are running the world because my friends are fucking awesome. They're really smart and they're running big companies now, but they'll be running the biggest companies in the world in 20 years. We're running this place. Like this is our world to take over in 20 years. And I can see the edges of what's being created. It's like, this could be great.
Totally.
It's a great opportunity for us.
Well, just so you know, we feel way more hopeful and optimistic after this conversation, dude. So just thank you so much for coming on and being willing to sit down with us and have this awesome rip. I mean, we both took a ton of nuggets from this conversation, and just looking forward to keeping the friendship going and hanging out in person.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for the time. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the time, man.